immediately after my brother died, I was deep in grief and despair and post-traumatic stress, but there were moments where I remember being like, but there's like all this beauty, and like there are things that I don't feel like you can really explain in any other way other than God.
Right.
Um, and then really, like, once I started meditating, it was like, oh wow, it was the Holy Spirit. It was my relationship with God. There is a God, and this is all the proof that I have. And rumination is r- going over those thoughts and those events over and over and over and over again. So like traditional talk therapy, when you're in traditional talk therapy for years on end with a therapist who isn't challenging your thoughts and isn't
Right.
actually encouraging you to make different decisions, then it can actually be detrimental to somebody as opposed to helpful.
I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of The Soul Inspired. Today I have Melissa Armstrong with me. She is I think I would probably say you're a specialist in the mind body connection. She's worked with trauma. She's a health coach, and we're also going to talk a little bit about her connection with faith. So I want to say thank you so much, Melissa, for coming on the show, and I'm excited to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe. I'm really excited to be here.
I usually start each conversation with the fact that majority of people that I talk to have gotten to a certain place. There must have been something that kind of happened in their life, usually, that kind of changed their direction in a way. And I'm wondering if that happened to you. And if it did, who Melissa was before that happened. Like, what kind of person were you? What was your life like before the changes?
Yeah. Yeah, gosh, that's such a loaded question.
Yeah, it is. I'm
Trying to
sorry.
think like when is the point that because I feel like it's kind of been like an evolution,
Okay.
and there's been like different points where I've kind of like shed off like who I was before and started to become somebody new. But I would say definitely in the last so my life changed significantly when I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And that happened in 2016. And then I was baptized in 2019. So I feel like at those 2 points, my life definitely took a different turn in the more like spiritual realm. But I think even before that, like so many things happened. It's hard to narrow it down to one specific thing. I came from a very chaotic, abusive childhood, had a lot of trauma in my own, past from 0 to 18. And then when I was 18, my brother was killed traumatically in front of me. So that was kind of like a super big pivotal, point in my life also. But as far as like when you're looking at like when does things start to get better, because I think all of those things speak to like how it was getting worse.
Hmm.
um yeah, things really started to improve and change for the better in 2016, and even more in 2019.
Okay. So all right. Thanks for answering that. So you had a tough upbringing, it sounds like, and then you switched over by you got baptized in 2019, but that was after your brother's death. Is that right?
Yeah, he died in 2004.
2004. So from 2004 until 2016 into 2019, because you got baptized in 2016 or 2016, you said you accepted Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So but from 2004 to 2016, let's say, that was some pivotal point years that you were going through. What was your life like during those years? What were you going through during the time after your brother's death?
I was so unwell.
Mhm.
And so through that whole conversation and process, I tried meditation for the first time. And for me, meditation was really like, that's, I think, also to go back and answer your previous question, that was a pivotal moment for me too. So that would have been like maybe like 20, yeah, it was like 2010, because that's when I was licensed as a nurse. And um, it really helped me heal. And
Mhm.
meditation for me eventually became prayer. And that's how I came to know God.
The reason I go right to that right away is because that comes up a lot with a lot of the guests I have that have had close calls with death and a lot of these experiences they've had, and they come back and they they want to become closer spiritually, because now they've had a taste of it, if that makes sense. So these are people who've been clinically dead and brought back, and they've seen different things, and they come back and they're confused, right? And the biggest thing they find is meditation really calms them down and brings them back to that place. So, you don't have to have just an NDE though to experience that. So you found meditation calmed your mind. I also had anxiety and panic. I had more anxiety disorder in my from about 17 to 21, where I was just in a constant state of uh anxiousness all the time. I just felt like I was like foggy and dizzy, and it was constant. A couple times I didn't I look back now and I don't think I was having panic attacks, but now when I look back, I can remember like not being able to catch my breath at times or things like that and being like, oh, maybe that's what that was. I'm like, yeah, Joe, you weren't on a run, like there was no reason why you should have been trying to catch your breath. So yeah, I look back now and I think that was my classification of a panic attack, but they can be pretty brutal. I've seen people in malls where they just are on the floor and I'm thinking they're having a heart attack, but no, they're having a panic attack, things like that. So you were going through it and then you started meditating and you became more spiritual. How did that happen? Okay, so I want to dig in just a second because I am very wide open to everything. Um, the one thing that can happen sometimes when you're talking with guests who've had past life experiences is if they grew up in kind of a dogmatic religious ideology or something that was negative, and they go and they see that God is all loving, they come back and they're like, I don't want anything to do with that anymore. So I get that. But then I also have people who've never experienced anything and they see Jesus, or so there's all these different experiences. So I'm very wide open as a host to people who've had these experiences. I can't just be into one style. You know what I mean? I have to listen to everything and I collect what I hear and feel. But I know that a lot of people can just find the faith, and I'm wondering how it happened for you.
Yeah, it was really meditation was the beginning. So when I grew up, like we didn't have any, I had no exposure whatsoever to faith or Christianity, religion, anything.
Mm.
My mom was often told us, like when my brother died, like, see, God is not real, because if God
Oh,
was real,
wow.
then this would not have happened.
Mm.
I was 18 when he died. He was 23. And I think really I always knew that it's a strange thing, because I've said this before, but like I believed her because she was my mom and she was my only parent. My dad took off when they divorced when I was 6, and she was my only parent. I believed her when I was young, but I think as like into my teen years, and then when my brother died, I remember being like, is that right though? Like, is that real? Because that, like, I don't know. Like I could see immediately after my brother died, I was deep in grief and despair and post-traumatic stress. But there were moments where I remember being like, but there's like all this beauty, and like there are things that I don't feel like you can really explain in any other way other than God.
Right.
And then really, like, once I started meditating, it was like all of a sudden it was like this connection to my creator. And it was like when I would calm my mind, when I could quiet my mind, which is very difficult, but for me at the beginning happened very easily and quickly, to be honest with you. And I don't think that that was really me. I think that that was the Holy Spirit, and really just helping me, connecting with me. um and then I could hear God's voice, and I could feel that presence of something greater than myself. And I kind of lived there for a period of time
Mhm.
where I didn't know exactly what it was. And because I had no experience with it. And then I met a woman in 2015 who is still one of my very dear friends. Her name is Lisa. And she said to me, we met the first day that we met. She said something to me along the lines of, "Yeah, we were leaving work. We worked together. I had just met her. She said, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna go home and like do my Bible study or something." And I was like, "Oh, you do a Bible study?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I was like, you read, so you read the Bible? You've read the Bible?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "I want to read the Bible." And she's like, "Okay, let's do it. You want to read the Bible together?" And I was like, "Yes."
Right.
And so she really like was really there for me to start trying to understand, not that I understand now, but like like I she helped me understand what I had been experiencing, and like,
Mhm.
oh wow, it was the Holy Spirit, it was my relationship with God. There is a God, and this is all the proof that I have. um yeah.
Wow. Okay. So she comes into your life, introduces you into faith, and
Yeah.
then as time is going on, then you become baptized in 2019, it looks like, right?
Yep.
So that's not really that long ago. It's 5 years ago. So interesting. Wow. So, and the Bible comes up a lot in my conversations because I mean, I obviously speak with people who have strong faith and they see the Bible as everything. Then I have people who have different belief systems, but it's not like they don't acknowledge the Bible. They still acknowledge that there's something about the Bible. There's things that are in it that are the messages are very clear at times. Sometimes you can interpret it differently, but
Yeah.
it definitely can bring you closer. You also sound like when you were meditating, you were having almost like, to me, I'm interpreting it as you're really connecting to your higher self. And then as you're connecting with your higher self, you're then connecting with God, right? So that's kind of that's what started to happen. And you went through massive trauma. So, talking about trauma, like I'm sitting here listening to this and I'm thinking, I've had trauma too, but not to that extent. But then some people will say, well, everyone's trauma is just as significant. Everyone deals with it different. But I could see that the amount of trauma you had when it comes around, losing a brother to violence. I'm sorry, I think that's what happened, right? I didn't dig into what happened to him, but
It was an accident. Yeah.
okay. And then also the school, uh, like that stuff. If you just bury that and you continue on your life, that can lead to some big problems. I was also going to say, I have a little social work background. That's what I was taking in school and psychology and all this stuff. And you were saying you don't know how you got through nursing, which is very difficult. Nursing, I'm a music coach and I teach people who are nurses, and I know some of the stuff they deal with depending on which area of nursing and just going through the schooling of it. That could have actually helped you uh, kind of push your way through until it was time to figure it out. Because had you not had something that you were going towards that did give you a lot, like nursing it's not easy. Like you got to really kind of be on it, be on the ball kind of to get through it. Do you know what I mean? Does this make any
Yeah.
sense? Like I'm
Yeah,
sitting here
I've
thinking,
actually never considered that, but
yeah,
you're probably right, because I had like a goal rather than just being like idle. If I would have just been like
right,
idle in my grief and despair, it probably I could have a very different outcome right now.
right. Like had you been unemployed, not working,
Yeah.
any of these things it could have really gone a different way. And I understand that it would have been difficult to deal with having panic attacks while you're getting ready to do your, uh, you know, some huge
Clinicals.
test or clinical
Yeah.
studies and things like, yeah. So, but you probably allowed it, that probably helped you because you were able to turn it off. Okay, this is what I got to do. And then you'd come back to it later. And, but
Yeah, I've never thought about that. You're probably right. That's
yeah,
actually exactly probably
yeah,
because I remember being like almost compartmentalized, like, okay, now I have to go to, like, I had to go, like, I couldn't miss the class
Right.
or I would fail out of nursing school. And that was like my 5-year plan,
Right.
like,
Exactly. Like, you don't have time for that. I'm going to put it over here for a minute.
yeah.
Go do that. And yeah, it's going to come back.
Yeah.
So, and the thing is you were doing that. You were probably doing that. And then you found your faith. And then it's like, okay, time to deal with stuff. So moving into that, because I now knowing that you're a health coach. Here's a double whammy question. You can answer it whichever way you'd like. How did you start then dealing directly with your traumas? And did you right away notice that there was a mind body connection to the things you weren't dealing with? Like, was it because you said you were getting things that were affecting your physical body, and because people go 5, 10 years like that and then figure out this and they fix it and they go, oh, I wish I did that 10 years ago because I had this pain in my back or pain in my whatever. So trying to help out the listeners out there. How
Yeah.
did you deal with the trauma and that, getting through that ideology that you do have a mind body connection with everything?
Yeah. I love that question. The mind body connection is really like my, just, it's my passion. I love talking about it because I think it's so under talked about, especially in medicine. Like, coming from traditional nursing, I worked in a hospital for, I've been a nurse for 14 years. We don't talk about that in medicine. But yeah, great question. So from the time my brother died when I was 18 until I was like 23, 24 was when I started meditating. I was really, really sick. So for that full 5, 6 years, I was in that like emotional, completely dysregulated, panicked, anxiety, depression, and then all the physical symptoms started pretty early on in that journey. So I lived there for a solid few years. When I, all the while during that time, I was going to therapy. I started therapy right after my brother died. So I was doing, well, I had done some therapy before that too, um, with the shooting and some other things, but it was just like traditional talk therapy. It wasn't actually like, I feel like, really helping me much. I was just talking about my problems all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when when I started meditating, all of a sudden, I remember being like, why does this work? How is this helping me? How I'm able to quiet my mind, and oh my gosh, this feels amazing. Why have the doctors not told me about this? Like, nobody's ever mentioned this to me before. And how does this work? And so I started like researching and reading books and trying to understand, like, what is meditation? Why does meditation work? I heard the term like neuroplasticity, and I'm like, what is neuroplasticity? Which is the actual like physiological changes that can happen in your brain, and you can like really rewire your brain. Um, Learning about that and just learning, and I kind of like opened this door to this whole other side of healing, and that was really where I suddenly understood that there was a connection so much greater than what I had previously been educated on and thought. And when I realized that was really when I like all of a sudden was like, oh, this is why I'm feeling so terribly, is because all of this other stuff in my past, like, I would have panic, like my dad was abusive. My dad was like physically abusive. Like, he would beat the daylights out of my mom, like in the living room, like right in front of us, like that alone just like traumatizes somebody. And the way I was really, really little, like 3, 4, 5 years old. Like, so just understanding how that had impacted the way my brain was functioning. And so I, in that in that search, I discovered different ways to heal. One of those was EMDR therapy. And I was like, why has my therapist never suggested EMDR? I should try this. So doing EMDR and meditating, and then I started doing other somatic work like breath work, emotional freedom technique or tapping. And then I also started understanding like how I was um, taking care of my physical body and my mind, and understanding how the amount of stress that I was under was just really making it impossible for me to, it was just giving me massive inflammation in my body. And
Mm.
like I realized all of a sudden, like, or I learned, that those thoughts were actually like toxic to my body. And yeah, so that was, I think I answered both of those questions, but it was really an evolution over many years.
That's amazing. So you're speaking to me right now because I am someone who has been a, this the we're very we have a lot in common. So the way that we handle stress, I've always put my stress into physical. I get physical ailments, but then I've had times where been able to heal them. I know that sounds ridiculous, you know. I went to
I don't
traditional
think it does.
medicine. I know, and yeah, it's amazing because like, you know, it's one of these things where I'm always careful what I say because what people need to understand is that we do need doctors and nurses. We do need medicine. We do need these things. That's not going away right now, at least, you know, maybe in 500 years from now, we'll all figure it out. But here's the thing. We still need that. We still need people that can put broken bones back together and bandage up kids that get hurt and all these kinds of things, right? Like that's what we need. But we are a lot more powerful than I think we believe. I think that our minds create a lot of problems and our stress creates a lot of problems and it creates a lot of inflammation. And by what you're saying, it's exactly what I've dealt with at times. Now, it sounds like, and what does EMDR stand for? Is that
uh,
collect? Do we know this?
eye movement desensitization and reprogramming or reprocessing, depending on who you talk to. So it's a modality of therapy that uses like, I don't know all of the like specifics and science behind it, but the way it worked for me is my therapist actually had like two handheld devices that would pulse at specific intervals depending on the setting that she put on the machine. So while I was recounting what had happened or talking about the traumas, and that it actually like helps you reprogram it. I heard a
Hmm.
incredible woman talk about it recently, and I'll do my best to recount it. I just heard it a couple days ago and I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. um Dr. Mary Catherine, and what is her last name? I can't remember her last name off the top of my head, but I can send it to you. She has a new book out, and I'd love to read it. It sounds fascinating. But she talked about it as like basically your brain has all these, you have your brain is like a file room, right? You have all these files in your brain. And when you have all these little guys that are like working in this file room, and they're like putting different labels on the files, like labeling it as like funny or sad, or putting little tag words on the files to so you can go and pull those memories out of your file cabinet when you need them. And when you have trauma, it's as if everybody in the file room just like went and took a break. And then all of a sudden, all of these files just get thrown into this file room, right? And there's nobody in there who's actually like organizing those files.
Hmm.
And then when you come out of that trauma, like when a period of time has passed, all of a sudden these guys get back into the file room and they're like, well, what is all this? Like, we have no idea where these goes. And they just kind of like stuff them places, like, because they just don't really know where. So they just kind of are not organized, and they're not like really, they don't necessarily make sense. They're not labeled necessarily properly because they don't really know what happened because they weren't there. They were on break. Right.
Right.
So, just EMDR is one modality that kind of helps like reorganize and reprocess those. Um, yeah, Mary Catherine. I'll have to think of her last name. I can't remember, but sorry, keep going. That was
No,
just a side
wow.
note.
No, that's perfect because what I was going to ask about that because the thing is it sounds like what EMDR is doing is allowing you to go back and uh organize those feelings. That I'm not completely against talk therapy. I do sometimes believe that there's a time frame for that, and then there's a time frame to heal from that.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if you know what I mean by that, but I've gone through it too, and there's times where I'm
yeah,
like, I just want to let this out, and that's fine. But
yeah,
then if I'm just letting it out, but I'm not actually organizing my thoughts or feelings around it, or then I'm
yeah,
just kind of almost regurgitating the same story.
yeah,
And I think then all of a sudden you're just playing, not trying to say we're playing victim, but you're kind of just re-victimizing yourself over
oh
and
yeah,
over and over. And I think that that
totally,
can then trigger your traumas again. And then
yeah,
you're just back to the same place. I
yeah,
think I do think there's a place for it, but then
yeah.
I think there's maybe should be then this, okay, we've done that now, we've spoke our truth. Now let's organize it. And
What are
then
we
that,
gonna do
what are
about
we
it?
going to do with it? What are we going to do with all
Yeah,
that? Because
yeah,
now it's like you're just, 20 years from now, you could just say the same thing again, and then you're just redoing it again. So,
yeah. Actually, research shows that exactly. I totally agree with you. There is a time and a place for just like ICUs, ORs, ERs, all of that. Like, I am not against traditional medicine. I just
mm,
think for like true healing, that model is not great. If you have like a broken bone or an accident or cancer or something, definitely go there. Don't call me. But like, for same thing with talk therapy, is talk therapy research actually shows that one of the number one symptom of depression is rumination, and
mm,
rumination is going over those thoughts and those events over and over and over and over again. So like traditional talk therapy, when you're in traditional talk therapy for years on end with a therapist who isn't challenging your thoughts and isn't
right.
actually encouraging you to make different decisions, then it can actually be detrimental to somebody as opposed to helpful.
Mm,
um, Dr. Abigail Shire has an incredible book also about that, just that whole fact, and she's amazing. But really quick, Dr. Mary Catherine McDonald is her name,
okay.
and her book that she just released is called Unbroken: The Trauma Response is Never Wrong, I believe is what it's called.
I love that.
And
That could be,
she's
yeah.
fascinating.
I'll have to check it out. One doctor I always bring up a lot is the late now Dr. Sarno. I don't know if you know who Dr. Sarno was, but
I don't.
he he was, I don't know if he started in traditional medicine, but he at some point discovered the connection, the mind body connection with trauma, and he figured that a lot of our ailments, a large amount of them, can be healed through from ourselves because we're dealing with internal rage. So his idea was that we have internal rage that causes oxygen deprivation. He would use that as the terminology, and it would cause ailments. And because you're not allowing the body, there's no like homeostasis. There's nothing, your body's not flowing correctly. So you would get different ailments. And he's written a couple of books too, but his name's Dr. Sarno. He just passed in the past year or so. So it's kind of sad, but he was, I think he was in his well in his 90s, but he helped a lot of people. So, but
Yeah,
same type of thing, but around the mind body work is the same thing. So it's interesting that so you're a nurse that understands that, um and you coach people through some of their traumas this way. Or do you use any of these other modalities? Like, do you use EMDR, or what is it that you do with people that you're
yeah.
working with?
I would love to eventually do EMDR, but I don't currently. In my future, I see myself possibly offering that, but most of what I do right now is actually all of what I do right now is completely virtual. So EMDR is harder to do virtually, but not impossible. But I do a lot of, so yes, I help women overcome their trauma, heal their mind, body, and spirit. So I use functional medicine practices, which is also always a root cause approach. So why is your body having these symptoms? Why is there an imbalance in your body that's causing these symptoms? And how can we fix that imbalance to ultimately alleviate the symptoms versus traditional medicine that's asking what is your symptom, what pill can we give you to fix that, because it's really the approach there is a pill for every ill, right? So functional medicine is really a root cause approach. So I use functional medicine practices to help people uncover the imbalances in their body, but also really helping people understand that mind body connection and tapping into their higher self and really being able to, I think we all know the answers, like we all know what we need, we just have to tap into that. So I use somatic release, so tapping, meditation, breath work, and help people process through their trauma. I'm not different than a therapist. I'm not going to like go back and talk about all of the events, because that doesn't, I don't even need to know necessarily what they are. Like we just are going to move forward and process through. If we have, you have Dr. Bessel van der Kolk has an incredible book. You've probably heard of it. The Body Keeps Score. It is really shows that your body holds on to this trauma. You actually store that energy, which is, or that emotion, which is just energy in motion in your body. And you need to process that energy out of your body in order to move forward, so it doesn't hold you back. So that's what I help women do, is really processing that energy out of their body, assess and really change their lifestyle, nutrition, stress management techniques, all of those things to help really balance their body, back to homeostasis so that they can heal those ailments. And I use functional lab testing to help me guide my protocols to see really like, where are the imbalances? What are you going through? What are the symptoms that you're having, and how is that manifesting physically in your body?
Mm-hmm. I love how you have the approach from, you have, like I said, the nursing background, the physical, you understand the physical, and then you also have this deep connection now that you've found through faith and through meditation and things like that. So I'm sure somewhere along the lines in your coaching that comes up.
Yeah, it does.
People live really, really busy lives. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that will hear this and say, oh, I would love to meditate and connect to my higher self, but I got to take my kids to soccer practice. And then I got to get up at 7 a.m. and get to work right away. And then I'm doing a 10-hour shift and whatever it is, right? People are,
Mm-hmm.
if you're a nurse, how did you find that time? Like, how did you find that time? Was that one of the hardest parts?
Um,
Or were you
I
just at the end of it? You were just like, I got to do something.
yeah, it wasn't very hard for me, and
Mm.
I think it's because I was done. I was done living like that, and I realized that like we all have the same 24 hours in the day. It's
Mhm.
not ever a matter of in my experience, in my opinion, it's not ever a matter of time, it's a matter of priority. So you have to make the time. For clarity's sake, I don't typically recommend meditation as a first step for people,
Right.
especially people who have gone through trauma, because a lot of times it creates more anxiety. I use other like easier breathing techniques and tapping as a first step generally, because it's easier to implement and it's not as anxiety provoking. It's really hard to just sit and quiet your mind when your
Right.
mind hasn't been quiet for sometimes a
Yes.
decade or more. Um, but yeah, it's really a matter of priority. Like 5 minutes a day. Just give me 5 minutes a day and you can change your life.
Wow. That's amazing. I was just gonna say too, music is what puts my mind at ease. That's why I've always gone to music. But yeah,
Yeah.
I have a busy mind, so I can relate to that, trying to calm
Yeah.
my mind down just for even
Yeah.
10 minutes. But
Even
interesting.
just like 30 seconds, just like calming your, just doing some like quick, easy, just breathe. That's what I like. A lot of times that's what I start with people with is like, just breathe.
Mhm.
So many of the, like, so many of us live so in our subconscious, and we're, like you said, leading busy lives, and you're thinking about the, 10 other things you have to do today, that you're
Mhm.
never actually even taking a deep breath.
Right.
Just sit there for 30 seconds and close your eyes and just breathe. Take some deep breaths, and you'll feel your body just come down a level or two or more.
So these are baby steps. You take it in steps until you get to the point where you can kind of control,
Yeah.
because we're kind of out of control, really. We're kind of in autopilot, right? So you're trying
Yeah.
to take control of your body again. With the
Yep.
people you've worked with, and I'm not sure exactly how long you've been doing this now, but if you look at the mind body connection, maybe you may or may not know this at this point, but everyone has different ailments and things they're dealing with. Have you seen any commonalities between things where different areas of your body represents different triggers? For instance,
Mm,
oh, I have this issue and I dealt with this when I was younger. Or I always wonder about that. I know it's kind of
yeah.
an odd one, but I've always wondered. I guess everybody's body is different, so maybe people's bodies get um, affected different ways physically. Because you obviously
Yeah.
you were going through a lot. I'm just curious if you've seen anything like that.
Yeah. I think every body and everybody is different, like you said. So it really manifests completely different in each individual person, and it really depends on, you know the things that you've experienced, how you internalized those things, your genetic predisposition. So like, what genes do you have that are able to be triggered into certain things, like excuse me, skin disorders, or maybe it manifests as joint pain, or maybe it manifests as migraines, or I do see a lot of gut dysfunction. So like, and like, gastrointestinal complaints. So bloating, abdominal pain, diarrhea, constipation, those kinds of things, or like just general, like I don't ever feel good when I eat.
Mm.
I see a lot of skin stuff. So our skin and our gut are so closely related. And when you
Mhm.
have a lot of trauma, it causes crazy dysfunction in your gut microbiome, which leads to the skin disorders. And then, of course, mood disorders. So, anxiety, depression, panic, just like a lack of joy, fatigue. Fatigue is a big one.
Yeah. Wow. So, okay, how do people connect with you? Where's the best way they can connect with you and work with you with things like this?
So my website is holistichealthbymelissa.com. You can find me there, read about me, and there's a short little application if you want to schedule a free call to chat with me. I'd love to chat and see if we're a good fit. And if not, I have a big network of people who I can refer you to. And then also, I'm on Instagram, Holistic Health by Melissa, Instagram
Great.
and Facebook. But my favorite platform currently is Instagram.
Great. Yeah, I was gonna ask if you're on social media too, like Instagram or something. So you said Holistic Health by Melissa.
Yep, that's everything. I'm on all everything is Holistic Health by Melissa.
Awesome. I love that. We dug in a little bit earlier on about your faith and everything, and how you now are, you know, you found a different approach from what you were raised with because you were being told one thing. And I can understand if you're a parent and you have loss like that, I can understand going there, but you were also dealing with other things from your past and all this stuff. But you're obviously on a different trajectory now. You're in a different path and you're moving in this direction. One of the last things I generally ask people if they can dig into, and this is a little bit different because these are usually around people who've had some real close calls with death themselves and things like that, but you've had life experience. If you were to come up with any type of reasoning or answer, why do you believe that we, Melissa, Joe, humans, why we come here. Like, what is the main reason we come here on this earth? Why do you think we're here?
Oh gosh, I love that. I think um I think that we all have a different path and a different assignment, but ultimately I feel like the the goal of all of it is to like growth in whatever that means for you. Like it's different for every person, I think. So like growth and coming back to that connection to your higher self and your connection to our creator.
The growth
Yeah.
and to as we get closer to our connection with the creator.
Yeah.
Perfect. You said it perfect. Is anything else you want to share with anyone? This has been amazing talk. I was,
Yeah.
yeah, this has been really good, and they're all things that I'm really fascinated by. And I have to be honest, just I love the fact that you are an RN, like that you've done the science route as well. You understand what you're learning. I also like how in the beginning you said, you know, this you weren't taught any of this. And I truly believe, I'm even going to put it out there and say, years from now, it is going to be a part of learning. And, you know, I think traditional medicine and our the medicine that's out there that we're learning is going to come together. It's getting closer and
Yeah.
closer. I
It's
truly believe
changing.
it.
The landscape is definitely changing for
Yeah.
sure.
And you know, that's what happens. We grow, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to keep growing because a lot of people back in the day, doctors, nurses, anyone who would, you know, say any of this stuff, they'd be ostracized or, you know, they'd be kind of thrown to the wolves and said, you're out of your mind. Like it's science only. But
Yeah.
there's
This is science.
this is science. What is science really? Like
Yeah.
everything is
Yeah.
science. So it's
Science
like
is always like 10, 20 years behind like the tradition, what we're actually doing in medicine. So I totally agree with you. I think
right.
it's coming. The landscape is changing.
I know I asked you if you had any final words, but apparently I had some final words. So do you
Yeah.
have anything you want to share with the audience before we're done? But I really appreciate
I
it.
always I always just like to land on reminding people that healing is always possible. I don't care what the doctor says, what your experience is, what you've got in your past, what you're feeling. Healing is always possible. Never give up.
Wow. I love that. Thank you so much for being on today. I always turn to the camera and say, please continue to like, share, and subscribe. It's because of you guys that we keep growing on Soul Inspired and I can keep getting amazing guests like Melissa on. So thank you so much, Melissa, for joining the Soul Inspired today.
Thanks for having me, Joe. It was a great time.